It seems as time goes on, writing in media, and especially character writing, seems to just get worse and worse. Shouldn't this be the opposite? Shouldn't advances in technology, schooling, a higher population, shouldn't these things all work together to make writing in media better in the long run? From what I've seen in recent media, it really doesn't seem like it. Seriously, when's the last time you finished a game, series, or movie that had you truly awestruck by the writing? And no, older media like Fallout New Vegas and Brokeback Mountain don't count. I'm talking about modern media, which feels like a rerun of the same narratives over and over again. How many times are we gonna have boring characters that don't really do anything for the story, other than critique capitalism and be depressed? And believe me, it's okay to make a story about the flaws of capitalism. In fact, BioShock is in my top 5 for most keynote games of all time. But to do this over and over again, I get it, man. Capitalism bad, Big Chungus good. Here's your Reddit gold. Take it and get out of here. So, what's the real reason that character writing is getting worse? Well, there's a lot of factors to consider when you ask this question. It's a multifaceted issue. And a big part of that issue is that there's a niche but very loud subgroup of people who are getting more and more sensitive and overbearing. And because of this, writers are compliant to bend the knee and cling to these weakly written characters who are more acceptable to these people. This is why we see so many of these characters who are devoid of any offensiveness or nuance, making them incredibly boring and typically one-dimensional. Now, this is okay in the sense that if you're a writer and you want to write garbage, it's your right to write garbage. It's completely your prerogative, but it's also my right as a consumer to criticize that garbage. So it's not a massive deal, you know, if it's an original work. But this goes from not a massive deal to downright abhorrent when you have these modern writers who are bastardizing older works. If any kind of adaptation, rework, or remaster comes out, it's usually pretty different from the source material, and that's okay, as long as it's better. But when a character has beliefs that some people deem as offensive or controversial, and you completely throw out these aspects of the character, despite them being well written and realistic, then not only are you doing the original author and the original work a disservice, but you're also doing a disservice to the audience who are smart enough to figure out right from wrong. On the off chance that a modern writer makes a character with controversial beliefs, the character is almost always demonized and written in a binary fashion. And there's no kind of reason or justification that these characters hold these beliefs. It's just they're bad because they're bad. Yet these same writers will make characters who are sociopathic murderers and load their story arcs with as much nuance and complexity as possible. Despite that being hypocritical, this is a good thing, and it's a sign of good writing when you create a character that has rationality behind their actions. But these writers are doing it one way, but not the other. This is antithetical when it comes to writing a well-crafted character and developing character growth. Because this might be hard to believe for some writers, but characters have to be bad in order for them to stop being bad. I know, it sounds crazy, but hear me out here. The best written characters are typically characters that go through a character arc. You know, those dudes who start out as something very different from what they end up being at the end of the story. A good example is my homie Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z, who had the character arc of going from an egotistical manlet who desperately needed a lineup and would kill anyone anywhere at any time just to feed his ego and chronic shortman syndrome, to an egotistical manlet who desperately needs a lineup, but he's more gooder now, especially after sacrificing himself to save the planet, his homie Kakarot, and his child. It's a complex redemption arc that we all love to see. A lot of people resonate with Vegeta, and a majority of these people call him the best written character in the entire Dragon Ball series. Vegeta as a character truly shows how much a little bit of character development can really make a character just pop like that. DBZ and Super would be nothing without Lil Vegeta, let's be real. But since I'm on the topic of anime, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about everybody's favorite childhood show, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Yes, that's right. It's time to talk about the Sokka controversy. Sokka as a character is incredibly well written, but he did have one minor character flaw that seems to make people fly off the rails. Listen, I'ma show you this, but you gotta promise not to be triggered, cause this is some crazy Hiroshima level of bigotry. Alright, I'ma show you it, but you've been warned.
Knew I should have left you home. Leave it to a girl to screw things up. Who are you? Where are the men who ambushed us?
There were no men. We ambushed you.
Wait a second, there's no way a bunch of girls took us down. Sorry, ladies, didn't mean to interrupt your dance lesson.
Sorry about yesterday. I didn't know you were friends with the Avatar.
It's all right. I mean, normally I'd hold a grudge, but seeing as you guys are a bunch of girls, I'll make an exception.
If you haven't been lobotomized yet, then you probably know that as far as misogyny goes, this is like peaceful difficulty misogyny. I honestly can't imagine anybody in real life that has a working brainstem being genuinely offended by something that's this minor. But believe it or not, Writers think that this is too offensive nowadays. So much so that the live-action adaptation isn't going to feature Sokka saying these horrid things, which is a shame because the trope of someone being prejudiced and then growing out of it is definitely one of my favorites. But most modern writers are hesitant to write characters like this because of fears of looking problematic. The Avatar: The Last Airbender adaptation is a perfect example of modern writing. People are completely willing to gut main aspects of a character to appeal to a very small minority of people. Sokka's character was fine when he was sexist. Actually, it was better because he was sexist. But to understand why, first you have to understand just a little bit about the tale of Sokka. Sokka was a young man when his father and all the other warriors left the Southern Water Tribe to fight the Fire Nation. Even though Sokka was extremely desperate to join the other men on the military expedition, he was denied by his father, who told him, quote, "Being a man is knowing where you're needed the most." From these little bits of information, you can infer that the Southern Water Tribe culture is pretty traditional. So on a narrative level, it makes complete sense on why Sokka would have this sexist attitude. It's part of the culture that he was born into and lived his whole life in. He saw all the men in his village leave to go risk their lives so they can protect the women and children. It would actually be comically unrealistic if he had a hyper-nuanced view of gender roles right off the bat. So anyways, back to Sokka. Sokka eventually stumbles upon some Kyoshi warriors, all of which are women, and Sokka, being the base chud that he is, ends up saying some slick shit and then he gets his ass humbled. After this, an embarrassed, insecure, and self-aware Sokka swallows up his pride and decides to ask the same people who humbled him how to get stronger. So they accept, they train him, and he eventually sheds his sexist beliefs, forever putting away the belief that all women are weak and changing as a character. Now I know this might scare off some modern day writers, but this just might be the elusive character development I was talking about earlier. Sokka had some character flaws that were a result of his upbringing, then an event forced him to see the world in a different light, changing his worldview and his character altogether. This is character writing done right, but it's apparently something that has no place in media today, according to articles like this. But hey, it is what it is. Who cares about silly old Netflix adaptations anyway? What I'm more concerned about is the insidiousness of this regressive mindset. It's a good thing to have characters with a variety of beliefs, even if they happen to be offensive or part of the political aisle that you disagree with, because these characters are incredibly interesting. They explore a narrative that's novel and realistic, and whether you like it or not, bigotry exists in the world, and it should exist in fiction as well. Writers don't need to put rose-tinted glasses over obvious issues. This shows zero respect for the consumer, who you think is too stupid to decipher right from wrong. Sure, you're gonna make a niche group of sensitive people very happy, but that's at the cost of writing good fiction. A common argument I hear against the creation of offensive characters is, "You really want characters to be bigoted? That's exactly what a bigoted person would say. You're a racist, sexist, bigoted piece of chud. Get downvoted." And I'm all for it, man. If me liking interesting characters that happen to have realistic and controversial beliefs makes me sexist, racist, or any of the isms, then the only thing I have to say to that is,
Awe, true to Caesar.
Caesar, or Caesar, as his legionaries like to call him, is a superb example of a well-written character that happens to hold some pretty controversial beliefs. These beliefs include, but are not limited to, sexism, cultural homogenation, autocracy, militarism, a distinct disdain of diversity, and a lot of other fun stuff that I'm probably not allowed to talk about. Caesar, his legion, and their beliefs are without a doubt offensive by all measures. That goes without saying. But what's truly remarkable about the writing in Fallout New Vegas is that they don't demonize Caesar's legion in a way that's binary or obvious. There's some discrete hints here and there, but it's mainly left up to interpretation. They respect us enough to form our own opinions, and that's how it should be. The writers had a chance to make Caesar this bumbling idiot so that it's obvious to us that his beliefs are incorrect. But instead, the writers made Caesar articulate, intelligent, charismatic, all characteristics that you would need to run an empire like the Legion. When you talk to Caesar, he's rarely contradicting himself or spouting gibberish. He's making clear and concise points that could make sense or not depending on your own personal beliefs. And on top of that, the writers put a spotlight on the incompetence of the NCR, not hailing them as these clear good guys despite being a democratic nation with beliefs that are more in line with the politics of the average consumer. They let you see the corruption, the greed, the idiocracy. There's so much nuance and perspective given, it's no wonder that 13 years after the game was released, that there are still debates going around over whether the Legion or the NCR would be better rulers for the Mojave. The cornerstone of writing a good character with a controversial yet fascinating ideology is one word: nuance. But unfortunately, we rarely see that in media today. So instead of trying to write a character or characters who are made to be as innocuous as possible, as an attempt to try to not offend anyone, Writers should instead just focus on making characters that are interesting and nuanced. Unfortunately, a lot of these modern writers won't do this. They know that the people who cry about racism are much louder than the people who cry about wanting well-written and nuanced characters. And that's why I despise modern writers and modern writing. They're terrified of writing good characters that have beliefs that are deemed as problematic, and they're so hell-bent on appealing to a niche group of mentally disturbed, terminally online freaks who would eat them alive if they found one controversial tweet that they made a decade ago. So yeah, fuck modern writers. All my homies hate modern writers. I hope more characters with a wide array of beliefs are written, regardless of how many degenerates complain about it on the internet. And yeah, this is your homie Bryce BSK, you know what I'm saying, clocking out. Join the Discord if you weigh over 600 pounds. And make sure you forget to like the video. I hate all of you. Goodbye.